30 minutes reading Kite Runner Chapter 16. There were a lot of reasons why I went to Hazard to find Hassan in 1986. The biggest one, Allah forgive me, was what I was lonely. But then most of my friends are relatives have either been killed or had escaped to the country Pakistan or Iran. I barely knew anyone in Kabul anymore, the city where I had lived my entire life. Everybody had felt I would take a walk in the Catherine Pawan section, where the melon vendors used to hang out in the old days. Remember that spot? And I wouldn't recognize anyone there. No one to greet. No one to sit down with the fortune, no one to share stories with, just rushy soldiers patrolling the streets. So eventually I stopped going out to the city. I would spend my days in your father's house, up in the study, reading your mother's old books, listening to the news, watching the community's propaganda on television. Then I will pray namaz, cook sometimes, eat, read some more, pray again, and go to bed. And I will rise in the morning, pray to do it all over again. And with my artist, it was getting harder for me to maintain the house. My knees and back were always aching. I will get up in the morning and it will take me at least an hour to shake the stiffness from my joints, especially in the winter time. I did not want to let your father's house go through it. We had all had many good times in that house, so many memories. Miriam, it was not right. Your father had designed that house himself. It had meant so much to him, and besides, it had promised him I will care for it when he and you left for Pakistan. Now it was just me and the house, and I did my best. I tried to water the trees every few days, cut the lawn, tend to the flowers, fix things and need fixing. But even then, I was not a young man anymore. But even so, I might have been able to manage, at least for a while longer. But when news of father's death reached me, for the first time I felt terrible loneliness in the house, an unbearable emptiness. So one day I flew up to the beach and drove up to Hazarhat. I remember that after Ali diminished himself from the house, your father told me he and Hassan had moved to a small village just outside Bamiyan. Ali had a cousin there. As I recall, I had no idea if Hassan would still be there. If anyone will even know of him, of his where whereabouts. After all, it had been 10 years since Ali and Hassan had left your father's house. Hassan would have been a grown man in 1986, 22, 23 years old. If he was even alive, that is the Sharawi. Way they root in hell from what they did to our Watan. Killed so many of our younger men. I did not have to tell you that. But with the grace of God, I found him there. It took very little searching. All I had to do was ask a few questions in Bamayan, and people pointed me to the village. I do not even recall the name, or whatever it even had one. But I remember it was scorching summer day, and I was driving up to a rather deep road, nothing on, either side, but some bakers' bushes, general spiny tree trunks, and dried grass like people throw. I passed a dead donkey rooting on the side of the road, and I then turned a corner and right in the middle of the barren land, I saw a cluster of mud houses. Beyond them, nothing but broad sky and mountains like jagged teeth. The people in Bamiyan had told me I would find him easily. He lived in the only house in the village that had a wooden garden. The mud walls, short and pocked with the holes, enclosed the tiny house, which was really not much more than a glorified hut. Barefoot, children were playing on the street, kicking a raging tennis ball with a stick, and they started when I pulled up and killed the engine. I knocked on the wooden door and stepped through into the yard that had been leading into safe for a parched strawberry patch and a bare lemon tree. There was a tandoor in the corner in the shadow of a acacia tree, and I saw a man squatting beside it. He was placing dough on a large wooden spatula and splitting it against the walls of the tandoor. He dropped the dog when he had saw me. I had to make him stop kissing my hands. Let me look at you, I said. He stepped away. He was so tall now. I stood on my toes and still just came up to his chin. The Bamiyan sun had darkened his skin and turned it several shades darker than I remember, and he had lost a few of his front teeth. There were spruce strands of hair on his chin. Other than that, he had those same narrow green eyes. That scar on his upper lip, that round face, that affable smile, you would have recognized him, American, I'm sure of it. We went inside. There was a young, light-skinned Hazar woman swinging a asshole in a corner of the room. She was visibly expecting. This is my wife, Rahim Khan. Hassan said proudly. His name is Farsan Hajan. She was a shy woman, so courteous. She spoke in a voice barely heard than a whisper, and she would not raise her pretty hazel eyes to meet my gaze. But the way she was looking at Hassan, he might as well have been sitting on the throne at the arch. When is the baby coming? I said after we all stood around the adopt room. There was nothing in the room, just a frayed rug, a few dishes, a pair of martyrs, and a lantern. Inshallah, this winter, Hassan said, I'm praying for a boy to carry on my father's name. Speaking of Lee, where is he? Hassan dropped his gaze. He told me that Lee and his cousin, who had owned the house, had been killed by a landmine 2 years before, just outside of Bamiyan. A landmine. It's the Moroccans' way of dying, Bamiyan. For some great reasons, I became absolutely certain that it had been Ali's right leg, his twitched pilot leg, that had finally betrayed him unstepped on that landmine. I was deeply sadness to hear Ali had died. Your father and I grew up together, as you know, and Ali had been with him as long as I could remember. I remember when we were all little at the year Ali got polio and almost died. Your father would walk around the house all day crying. Farsana made us shorwa with beans, turnips, and potatoes. We washed our hands and dipped fresh naan from tandoor into the shorwa. It was the best meal I had had in months. It was then that I asked Hassan to move to Kabul with me. I told him that how I could not care for it by himself anymore. I told him I will pay him well, that he and his Hanum will be comfortable. They looked to each other and did not say anything. Later, after we had washed our hands and Hassan had served us grapes, Hassan said the village was his home now. He and Farsana had made a life for themselves there. And Bamijan is so close, we know people there. Forgive me, Rahim Khan, I pray you understand. Of course, I said. You have nothing to apologize for, I understand. It was midday through tea after Sharo had Hassan ask about you. I told him you were in America, but that I did not know much more. Hassan has so many questions about you. How you married? Did you have children? How tall are you? Where were you? Did you still fly kites and go to cinema? Were you happy? He said he had befriended an old Farsi teacher in Bamiyan who had taught him to read and write. If he wrote you a letter, would I pass it on to you? And did I think you would write back? I told him that I knew of you from the few phone conversations I had with your father, but mostly I did not know how to answer him. Then he asked me about your father. When I told him, Hassan buried his face in his hands and broke in tears. He wept like a child for the rest of the night. They insisted that I spend the night there. Farsana fixed a cot for me and left me a glass of well water in case I got thirsty. All night I heard her whispering to Hassan. I heard him sobbing. In the morning, Hassan told me he and Farsana had decided to move to Kabul with me. I should not have come here. I said, you were right, Hassan. You have sent Daji alive here. I was presumptuous of me to just show up and ask you to drop everything. It is me who needs to be forgiven. We don't have that much to drop, Rahim Khan, Hassan said. His eyes were still red and puffy. We'll go with you. We'll help you take care of the house. Are you absolutely sure? He nodded and dropped his head. Agha Shabi was like my second father. God give me him peace. They pulled their things in the center of the few worn rag and tied the corners together. We landed the bundle into the buick. Hassan stood in the threshold of the house and held the Quran as I will kiss it and pass under it. Then we left for Kabul. I remember as I was pulling away, Hassan turned to take a last look at the home. When we got out Kabul, I discovered that Hassan had not intention of moving to the house, but all these rooms are empty, Hassan. No one is going to live in them. I said, but he will not. He said it was a matter of a matter of respect. He and Farsana moved their things into the home in the backyard where he was born. I pleaded for them to move into one of the guest bedrooms upstairs, but Hassan would hear nothing of it. What will Amir Aga think? He said to me. What will he think when he comes back to Kabul after the war and finds that I have assumed his place in the house. Then, in mourning for your father, Hassan wore black for the next 4 days. I did not want them to. I did not want them to, but the two of them did all the cooking, all the cleaning. Hassan tended to the flowers in garden, soaked the roots, picked up yellow leaves, and planted rose bushes. He painted the walls in the house. He swept rooms no one had slept in for years, and cleaned bedrooms no one had bathed in. Like he was preparing the house for someone return. Do you remember the well behind the row of corn your father had planted a million? What did you and Hassan call it? The wall of alien corn. A rocket destroyed a whole section of the wall in the middle of the night early that fall. Hassan rebuilt the wall with his own hands, brick by brick, until it stood whole again. I do not know what I would have done if he had not been there. Then, late the fall, Farzan gave birth to a stillborn baby girl.